I appreciate you thinking of me, but I need someone actually qualified for my launch event, not someone who dabbles in graphic design on weekends, my college friend Marcus said over coffee, his tone carrying that specific blend of arrogance disguised as practicality. This campaign could make or break my company, Natalie. I can't gamble on someone who does branding as a side project. No hard feelings. I sat across from him, absorbing the rejection of 12 years of friendship and 18 years of professional expertise, while he showed me his phone, scrolling through the portfolio of the real agency he'd hired. Their work was polished but generic, the kind of branding that looked expensive but said nothing. But why did I simply smile and attend the launch as a guest? And why, 4 weeks later, did Marcus's frantic calls go unanswered, while a business magazine published an exposé with my designs under the headline, "The Six-Figure Rebranding Disaster That Could Have Been Avoided"? The article generated 3 million impressions in 72 hours. The magazine's LinkedIn post became the most shared content in their history. Marcus's product launch had become an industry cautionary tale, and my weekend hobby designs were the only salvageable assets from the entire campaign. The dismissal had cut deeper than I'd anticipated. Marcus and I had met freshman year, study partners who became genuine friends, the kind of relationship that survived career changes and cross-country moves. I'd built a career in brand strategy and visual design, not dabbling as he'd characterized it, but running a consultancy whose client list included Fortune 500 companies, startups that went public, and nonprofits whose campaigns I'd crafted pro bono. My work had won industry awards. My case studies were taught in design programs. My client retention rate was 93%. But Marcus had never bothered to understand my career. He'd seen me sketch logos at parties, noticed my design software open on my laptop during visits, and concluded I was playing at being a designer. Never mind that I'd left my corporate position 5 years ago to run my own firm. Never mind that my consultancy generated 7 figures annually. "You still doing that freelance thing?" he'd asked last year at a reunion. "I run a brand strategy consultancy. I have a team of 6, and we work with national clients." "Right, your design hobby. That's great that you can make it work. The hobby that paid for my downtown loft. The hobby that had been featured in Adweek. The hobby that corporations paid $20,000 for." But to Marcus, I was still the college friend who doodled in notebooks. The launch party invitation arrived with a handwritten note. "So glad you'll be there to celebrate as a friend. Just relax and enjoy. No need to bring your work brain." The message was clear. Marcus had already decided I wasn't touching his brand, and he was preemptively shutting down any conversation about it. I'd considered declining. The coffee conversation had revealed something fundamental about how Marcus perceived me, or rather, how he'd chosen not to perceive me. 12 years of friendship, and he'd never taken my career seriously enough to investigate what I actually did. But I'd gone anyway, because despite everything, I'd wanted to support him. I'd brought my portfolio tablet out of habit. Brand strategists noticed design everywhere, but I'd promised myself I was there as a friend, not a consultant. The launch was expensive in that particularly soulless way corporate events often are. Venue, a trendy warehouse space with exposed brick. Catering, small plates that looked better than they tasted. Branding, everywhere, aggressive and confused. The real agency Marcus had hired was a firm called Elevation Creative, in business for 18 months, charging rates that reflected ambition more than experience. Their creative director, a woman named Stephanie who couldn't have been older than 25, had clearly convinced Marcus that youth equaled innovation. The branding was a disaster. The logo was a geometric mess that looked like 3 different concepts collided. The color palette shifted between materials: teal on the banners, navy on the programs, turquoise on the product packaging. The tagline changed depending on which branded item you read. The photography style ranged from minimalist to cluttered across different touchpoints. I watched guests trying to figure out what Marcus's company actually did. The messaging was so muddled that people were asking basic questions 3 hours into the launch. Is this a tech company or a consulting firm? What does elevate your paradigm even mean? Why does the website say something completely different from the brochure? I stood near the bar, observing with professional horror. This wasn't just bad design. This was a fundamental failure of brand strategy, the kind that happens when clients hire based on confidence rather than competence. My tablet came out during the networking portion, not for official documentation. Stephanie's team was handling that with aggressive Instagram stories and LinkedIn posts. But brand strategists can't turn off pattern recognition. I started sketching what the brand could have been. I redesigned the logo, simplifying the concept to something memorable. I unified the color palette. I rewrote the tagline to actually communicate value. I created a visual system that worked across applications. I photographed details that told the company's story: Marcus's hands demonstrating the product, a customer's genuine reaction, the moment when the concept clicked for someone. I worked maybe 3 hours throughout the evening, capturing probably 200 photos and filling 12 pages with notes and sketches. Nothing compared to Stephanie's comprehensive rollout, but coherent in a way their work couldn't achieve. The catastrophe revealed itself 4 weeks later. Marcus's voicemail arrived at 7 in the morning. "Natalie, call me back immediately. This is urgent. The agency screwed everything up. The investors are furious. Please, I need your help." I listened to the message once. Then I went for a run and ignored my phone for 6 hours. The subsequent messages escalated in panic. "Natalie, I know you probably have ideas about the branding. I saw you taking notes at the launch. Please, I need whatever you worked on. Anything. The investors are threatening to pull funding. You're my friend. Please." The agency delivered files that don't match. Nothing is consistent. The website doesn't work. The packaging has typos. I've lost 3 major clients because they can't understand what we do. Please help me. My entire company is collapsing. I have nothing usable. Please, Natalie, I'm begging you. The messages continued for 5 days. I didn't respond. The magazine inquiry came while I was refining my launch sketches into a full brand system. David Chen, senior editor at Business Innovation Quarterly, had seen some of my published work and wanted to discuss a feature story. We're doing an investigative piece on startup failures. Specifically, how bad branding decisions destroy otherwise viable companies. We heard about a situation where a founder dismissed a qualified brand strategist, hired an inexperienced agency, and the result was catastrophic. The dismissed strategist had attended the launch and developed a comprehensive brand strategy as an observer. Would you be willing to speak with us? How did you hear about this? The agency, Elevation Creative, posted about the project on social media claiming it was cutting-edge work. The comment section became a design critique. Several industry professionals recognized the branding failures. Someone mentioned that a nationally recognized brand strategist had been at the launch as a guest and had been rejected as not qualified. The story spread from there. What would the feature involve? We'd examine the decision-making process, analyze what went wrong, discuss best practices for vetting agencies, and showcase what effective brand strategy looks like. Your work from the launch would be the counterpoint. What could have been if the founder had made different choices? I considered the proposition. Marcus had called me unqualified. He'd rejected my professional services without reviewing my portfolio. He'd hired an agency whose work he hadn't properly vetted because their presentation was slick and their rates were high. And now, the only coherent brand strategy for his company existed in my tablet, created by the weekend hobbyist he'd dismissed. "Send me the details," I said. "I'm interested." The magazine feature was devastating and thorough. They interviewed Stephanie about the project failures, missed deadlines, inconsistent deliverables, fundamental misunderstanding of the client's business model. They interviewed investors who'd nearly withdrawn funding because the branding made the company seem amateur and unfocused. They analyzed the financial impact of bad branding on startup viability. And they showcased my work, the simplified logo that actually communicated the company's purpose. the unified visual system that worked across applications, the messaging that clearly articulated value, the photographs that told an authentic story instead of trying to manufacture innovation, documentary moments from the launch that revealed what the brand could have been if strategy had preceded design. The article's headline was brutal: the six-figure rebranding disaster that could have been avoided when founders confuse credentials with competence. Marcus's response was immediate and furious. "You showcased my company's failures in a national magazine without my permission after I begged you for help. How could you do this to me? The work is mine. I created it. I own the intellectual property. But it's my company, my brand. Your company, my strategy. You declined my professional services. The work I created as an observer belongs to me. This is beyond unprofessional. I thought you were my friend." "I thought so too. Then you called me unqualified in front of witnesses and dismissed 18 years of expertise without even looking at my portfolio. Friendship requires mutual respect, Marcus." The conversation that followed was overdue by years. "I didn't mean to insult you," Marcus said. "I just needed someone with real credentials." "What credentials was I missing? I have a master's degree in brand strategy. I've worked with companies you've heard of. My case studies are published. My work has won awards. What made Stephanie more qualified than me? She had an agency, a team, a professional website. She seemed legitimate." "So, legitimacy is measured by appearances, not by portfolio, experience, or track record?" Marcus had no answer. "You never asked to see my client list," I continued. "Never asked about my process, my rates, my references. You decided I was a hobbyist and rejected me without investigation. And then when your legitimate agency failed spectacularly, you expected me to rescue you. I was desperate. You were entitled. There's a difference." The article's reach extended beyond Marcus's humiliation. The story resonated with professionals who'd been dismissed by people who knew them socially, with entrepreneurs who'd made similar hiring mistakes, with industry experts frustrated by clients who valued presentation over substance. The comment section accumulated thousands of responses. People shared similar stories, debated hiring best practices, discussed the gap between perceived and actual expertise. My consultancy received 43 inquiries in the following 6 weeks. The brand strategy I'd developed as an observer became a case study that demonstrated exactly what strategic thinking looked like when separated from ego and expense. The hobby Marcus had dismissed had never been more professionally validated. The friendship didn't recover. Couldn't, really. The foundation had been revealed as weaker than either of us had realized. Marcus had spent 12 years not seeing me. Not my expertise, not my achievements, not the career I'd built while he assumed I was playing with design software. The dismissal over coffee had been the culmination of a pattern, not an isolated incident. And my response? Publishing the work, participating in the article, refusing to rescue him from consequences he'd created, had been equally revealing. I wasn't the accommodating friend who would absorb disrespect and provide salvation. I was someone who'd finally decided that professional dismissal deserved professional consequences. The brand strategy now serves as a teaching example in my consultancy, not as revenge or trophy, but as a demonstration of strategic thinking. The simplified logo, the coherent messaging, the unified visual system, these represent everything I try to achieve as a strategist. Work that clarifies rather than complicates. Design that serves purpose rather than ego. Marcus's actual brand barely exists now. The launch failed to gain traction. Investors reduced their commitment. The company limped along for 8 months before pivoting entirely, abandoning the confused branding that had cost him 6 figures and nearly destroyed his business. What could have been exists only in my portfolio now. The strategic solution he'd rejected, preserved by someone he'd called unqualified. I received one final message from Marcus 7 months after the article published. "I've been reflecting on what happened. I was wrong. Not just about hiring you, but about how I saw you. I reduced you to the college friend who liked design and never updated that perception, even when the evidence was everywhere. I'm sorry. Not because I need your help. I've accepted the consequences of my decisions. But because I was a terrible friend who never saw you clearly. I understand if you don't want to respond. I just wanted you to know I finally understand what I did wrong. I read the message multiple times. The apology was genuine, more introspective than I'd expected from Marcus, more accountable than his earlier anger had suggested. I didn't respond immediately, but I also didn't delete it. Some relationships, once damaged, can't be restored. Others leave enough foundation to rebuild something different. Scarred, cautious, but potentially more honest than the original ever was. I haven't decided which category this friendship occupies, but the choice is mine now. That's what professional respect earns you, the power to define your own boundaries. He called me a hobbyist and hired real professionals instead. The real professionals delivered a brand disaster that nearly destroyed his company. 6 figures spent on work so incoherent that investors questioned his judgment. The only usable brand strategy was the one I'd created as a dismissed guest. 200 photographs and 12 pages of strategic thinking that solved every problem his agency had created. He begged for it. I published it in a magazine instead. The 6-figure rebranding disaster that could have been avoided went viral in business circles. The hobby he'd dismissed became the only functional brand strategy his company ever had. And I became the strategist who'd been right all along. He learned the difference between credentials and competence. I learned the difference between friendship and familiarity. Some lessons are expensive. His cost him his company's credibility and 6 figures. Mine cost a friendship that had never seen me clearly anyway.